Wrangler here at Creators Institute, and we're going to be talking about creative nonfiction conclusions for chapters / essays, as well as creative nonfiction books on the whole. We're going to be talking about both when to end, a creative nonfiction chapter and essay, as well as how to do those things. So let's tackle the when first. You want to end your chapter or essay if you feel like things are getting too long. That isn't to say you can't have long essays or long chapters every once in a while, but the more that you have those, the more your reader is going to start to feel like, okay, there's a lot here. I am struggling to get through it. It's feeling a little, lengthy. So keep an eye on the length in general. A good amount to kind of keep in mind is 2,500 words to around 3,500 words. Of course, you'll have exceptions to that, and that's totally fine, but that's a good general guideline to keep in mind as you're writing. Another good place to end a chapter or an essay is if there is a shift in time or place or person. With memoir and essay collections, the person part of that is a little bit up in the air. It's more likely that you'll end on switching to a different place or switching to a different time. But regardless, that's a good point to end a chapter or an essay, is when you're moving from one place to somewhere else. It's a really clear-cut way to end a chapter and start a new one. Also, there are usually some natural ending points when you're writing a memoir and an essay, especially if it's a personal experience. It could be that you're writing about an event in your life, and that particular event has a very clear end point. Like maybe you went to a family reunion and you got there at a certain time and you left at a certain time. That's a great structure for your chapter. Start when you got there and end when you leave. That is a very natural way to end things, and it gives your reader a chance to kind of be there with you as well. And the same goes for essays. If you're interviewing someone, for whatever kind of essay topic that you're writing about, could be personal, could be more, cultural, criticism, that kind of thing. If you're interviewing someone, start at the beginning of the interview, end at the end of the interview. There are some natural starting points for creative nonfiction that are really helpful if you're trying to determine when to end your chapter or your essay. And along those same lines, if there's like a natural resolution of some kind, that's a little bit more ambiguous. It has to do more with like the narrator speaker / character in creative nonfiction that is often the writer. It could be at the point where that person is saying, okay, I feel as though I've come to the conclusion about some things. And that's also a good way to end a chapter. It's just kind of knowing that your speaker has come to the conclusion of something and they want to explore that. So that's another good place that you can end. As far as how to end your memoir chapter or your essay, you should really follow the logic of the chapter you just wrote. So if you wrote a chapter that a lot of things are happening, or your narrator is going through a really heavy point in time, by the end of that chapter, it makes sense that, the narrator is exhausted, is, not feeling the best. So ending on a particularly happy note at the end of a very trying chapter can be a little disorienting. So write the ending that fits your chapter. Not saying that a heavy chapter can't end on a upbeat note. It has been done and has been done well, but really make sure that that ending is logical to your chapter. Maybe someone went through something in particular, like maybe they had a fight with someone that they care about, and by the end, maybe they realized, oh, that fight actually meant something different than I thought it did. That's kind of a happy ending, but it fits the logic of the chapter. Your ending shouldn't be just out of nowhere They should really follow the logic of your chapter. And there are some good ways to do that. So if you end on a reflection of some kind, like the example I just gave, that's a good way to end a chapter. A realization along the same lines is a good way to end, or on a piece of dialogue. That can be a really strong way to end. You shouldn't use that every single time, but it can be a really effective way to let the reader know that, hey, this conversation or this line of dialogue is really important to maybe the character, again, that's probably you, or to the book as a whole. Ending on that piece of dialogue is really going to tell the reader, oh, I should be paying attention to that conversation. Of course, there are plenty of ways to end a chapter. Those are just some good ways. We do have a document, 2 documents actually, how to conclude a creative nonfiction chapter, as well as how to conclude a creative nonfiction book. And those both detail examples and methods for concluding a chapter / essay or a book. For ending an essay, it's a little bit different because things are more final. In an essay, think of it more of like a short story or an article that you would see in like Harper's or the New Yorker, the Atlantic, places like that. Those essays are contained within a single, chapter, essentially. The entire format of it should end in some kind of final thought, feeling, something that wraps the whole thing up. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything needs to be solved, but it should feel like a concrete end point. They should be self-contained and really explore the themes and ideas they're trying to explore within that single essay. When ending a whole memoir or essay collection, definitely keep these things in mind. Ending a memoir often feels like a very daunting task, but there are a couple of things that you should keep in mind. I would recommend having a clear endpoint before you even start writing. Of course, you don't have to do that. Everyone has a different process for writing, but I do recommend that you at least outline out where you want the book to go. Having that ending in mind will give you a clear idea of where the book is going, all of the journeys that, main character you is taking throughout the entire thing, and it'll give you a hard stopping point. With memoir, it can be kind of hard to decide when to cap the end of the book because, it's your life, you're still living it. But do give yourself a hard mark to say, no, we're ending here. This memoir is about this portion of my life. If it happens to coincide with your present day, you should be picking a moment to be your hard, this is my conclusion. That way you're not just perpetually writing into your present. And then the book will just never be done. So do pick like a hard endpoint for your memoir. In general, though, with memoir and essay collections, your ending should be when your main character, again, you, emerge on the other side. That could be in an essay collection, you learn something that you set out to learn. And by the end, you now have a new set of knowledge to take you into the rest of your life. With a memoir, it could be you starting out in hardship and then finding peace by the end. Overall, though, there should be a clear arc in the beginning where things are really troubled or where questions are raised, etc. And by the end, you should emerge on the other side of that with new knowledge and a new perspective of some kind. In general, that's how creative nonfiction books go. Of course, there are some exceptions, but in general, that's a good thing to keep in mind. How are you emerging on the other side? Lastly, to really understand creative nonfiction, you should be reading a lot of creative nonfiction. So if you're writing a memoir, read a lot of memoir. If you are writing an essay collection, read a lot of essay collections. There are plenty of examples in the documents I mentioned. Again, those are the creative nonfiction chapter conclusions as well as creative nonfiction book conclusions, but we also have other documents. There's one called Memoir Writing and one called How to Outline a Creative Nonfiction Book. Those will all give you some good examples that you can look for. Your editor will also be able to give you some examples to help you out and help out your specific mission for your book. And they'll be able to kind of guide you in how to end things, how to create that intrigue while also giving some resolution to each chapter / essay. But yeah, main thing is to read. Good writers read a lot, so make sure that you are reading and taking notes on everything that you're reading. But that should be it for conclusions. So good luck and happy writing.